The world of photography is heavily dominated by males, but Annie Leibovitz broke through barriers to become one of the most influential photographers of all time. The U.S. Library of Congress declared Annie Leibovitz a living legend, and she is the first woman to have a feature exhibition at Washington's National Portrait Gallery. But her impact on culture can be better measured through her photographs that not only defined the identity of multiple iconic magazines, captured the spirit of a generation, but she continues to do so. Born in Connecticut in 1949, Leibovitz's childhood was like many of those in military families, constantly moving to whatever location her father was stationed. Samuel Leibovitz was a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, so every few years the family would pack their things in the station wagon and hit the road. Thanks to the diligent filming by Annie's mother Marilyn, the camera became just another member of the household, a comforting presence there to capture the happy moments of a close-knit family. With all the time Annie spent peering at the world passing her by through the car window, this ready-made frame became subconsciously ingrained in her mind. There was the world inside the car, her reality, and the rest of the world at a comfortable distance through the lens that was the car window. As the Leibovitz children began to mature and the realities of the Vietnam War began to surface on the public's consciousness, the idyllic sheen of their nomadic lifestyle began to wear off. Her father was stationed in the Philippines while the family was marching to protest the war. Despite her dissent, Annie joined the family at the Air Force Base, where she bought her first camera and began to experiment with photography.
When they wanted me to go to the University of the Philippines, I managed to talk them into letting me stay in San Francisco and go to school there.
Annie's sister was living in Berkeley at the time, so their parents felt safe about having her move to the Bay Area in 1967. She moved into a small apartment with several of her friends, and her room was the closet.
I went to the San Francisco Art Institute as a painting major. I had it all figured out. I was going to become an art teacher. But I learned very early on that you can't become an art teacher till you become an artist, you know, and it was this... I said, really? The following summer, I took a workshop in photography. They asked you to go out that morning, take pictures, develop them in the darkroom that day, and that night you were sitting and looking at what you did and talking about it. You go out and walk around, and the immediacy of it, there was like a shared community wash where your prints came out, and you wanted to make sure that if your print was out there with everyone else's, it was okay and it was good. It was something really just wonderful about the whole process. It clicked. It clicked with me. Sorry. The School of Photography at the San Francisco Art Institute was really based on Robert Frank, who was considered the father of 35mm photography in the United States, and Cartier-Bresson, who represented the same kind of photographer in Europe. They were considered the first photographers who took photography in a way it had never been done before. They made it portable, very, very portable, very, very relaxed, very, very fluid, because they had a small camera. And this is how I learned to take pictures. It was personalized reportage work. The very first book that I began to realize what it meant to be a photographer was a Cartier-Bresson book, and it was called The World of Cartier-Bresson. I remember sitting down, looking at that book, and seeing that you could travel the world. The camera gave you this license to walk out and be alone in the world, but you were there with a purpose. It was a very important discovery.
When you were in school, what attracted you to photography?
Well, I think the painting program at the Art Institute was painters. It was very abstract, and it was very isolating. Painting was very,
The painters felt very isolated, I think, from the rest of the school. I had gone to the Philippines to visit my parents. My father was stationed at Clark Air Force Base, and I ended up going to Japan that summer and buying a camera and climbing Mount Fuji and buying a Seiko watch, and went back to school and took a night class in photography. And I'd have to say some of the initial feelings about photography were really the seduction of the darkroom. Just being. I loved being in the darkroom and watching, the images come up and the chemistry. I mean, it was very, very magical. Also, that you could see something, and have it, in a few hours, see it in another form, almost immediately. In other words, you would have an idea, or you have a point of view, and then you get to see it sort of materialize. And I think the immediacy of it. I was really captivated by. I mean, the fact that, you could have something so fast. And painting was a very slow process. I was very impatient.
San Francisco not only welcomed Annie Leibovitz to the area in 1967, but that very same year, a new magazine was born in this epicenter of music and culture. Rolling Stone magazine was founded by a then 20-year-old magazine editor named Jann Wenner, and his mentor, the jazz critic of the San Francisco Chronicle and co-founder of the Monterey Jazz Festival, the legendary Ralph Gleason. In 1970, Annie showed up at Rolling Stone with a bag of pictures, and from that moment forward, Annie Leibovitz and Rolling Stone magazine became intrinsically connected.
Annie was, one of the closest editorial collaborations I've ever had with anybody, and she, defined the look, helped define the look and the style of Rolling Stone, and even though she hasn't worked steadily for us for 10 years now, somehow her spirit is still in it in a very serious way. I mean, I suppose half the public currently thinks that she still works for us. But that collaboration was really intense and very, very productive.
I was looking to be adopted and and found Jann and Jane. It turned into family for me. It was more than a magazine, it was a way of life. The first cover was actually one of the photographs from the peace rally, and it was a crowd shot, and they used it as an illustration for revolution in the country, at that time.
It started as photojournalism. She'd go down the road with rock and roll groups, or go to places. We'd be covering a lot of cultural stuff at those times, or say religious, Maharishi type, extravaganza, and she'd do that. The campaign trail, the 1972 campaign, whatever we were doing, she was in the thick of it. I mean, she was working every day of the year.
Those early years were really golden in the sense that there was a lot of strength in being able to photograph without people thinking that you were doing anything. It was sort of like being invisible. I'm thinking back on Lennon, and Lennon was always like trying to put me at ease and trying to, let me relax. I think I always looked so worried. There was a certain kind of, let's help her out. let's just help her get through this.
At Rolling Stone, Leibovitz had the freedom to cover the stories that interested her, rather than being given each assignment like with most magazines. Her role was to photograph the world that her generation was living in, and her photo essays often decided what the next issue of the magazine was going to be about.
And there were a lot of times that the pictures were the crutch for the magazine. They didn't have a story and they just ran the pictures. That was, of course, true with Hunter filing for Nixon leaving the White House.
Mistake, yes, but for personal gain, never.
When Leibovitz went to cover Nixon's farewell from the White House, she did not have the same access as the White House press corps, but that turned into an opportunity to present a different viewpoint than what the New York Times and the Washington Post would be showing.
I had to wait till the crowd had left, and then I took my picture of some sort of detail. And to see those details sort of blown up, large in the magazine, they were very powerful.
Unlike the curated frame chosen by the Nixon White House for the media to capture, Leibovitz stayed on as the other photographers left and showed the candid moments as the spectacle was dismantled. Rolling Stone writer Hunter Thompson had been working on the Watergate story leading up to Nixon's resignation, but when the moment finally came, he was unable to finish the piece. The magazine instead ran Annie's photos of the day, a testament to how powerful and emotive the images were.
to do the best possible kind of photograph for what it is that I'm in right now, I really have to be in it. It has to be around me. Like, you know, like that is the best kind of photography, is what is around you. You know, like you become part of it.
What Annie would do was she'd spend 2 or 3 days on the road with the person, 2 or 3 days in their life. It was Fleetwood Mac or the Allman Brothers, she'd be on the bus with the Allman Brothers for 3 or 4 days and achieve a level of understanding and depth. That's what makes these photographs that she did so intimate and so revealing.
In order to get the best possible pictures, one had to become part of what was going on. You know, just do everything that was going on. And then you're there and no one pays you any mind and you can take the pictures you want to take.
At that time, we were all doing lots of oddball cultural things, poorhouses in Nevada, you know, any kind of subculture, slice of life thing. And certainly this was a window into that culture we didn't know much about.